Hello and welcome to the RF Generation Playcast. This is Grey Ghost 81, and what you're about to hear is something really cool. It's a departure from the norm and a blast from the past. In late 2013 and early 2014, Rich, Floyd, our old friend Jamie, and I had settled into our roles as the community playthrough hosts on rfgeneration.com. The playthroughs were highly enjoyable, of course, but Rich wanted to be able to further express his opinions about the games and share the highlights of the community members' input on the forums. He and Floyd conceived of the Community Playthrough Wrap-Up podcast. What follows is our test episode, or episode 0, of what is now known as the RF Generation Playcast. The episode covers the games played in February 2014, Parasite Eve for the PS1 on the retro side, and Kingdom Hearts for the PS2 on the modern side. Though our broadcasting talents have evolved and our equipment has been upgraded over time, we're proud of our first attempt and have decided to share this prototype episode with the world as a thank you to the community. Whether you play the games with us and leave your thoughts in the forums at rfgeneration.com, or if you just like to listen to the podcast. As always, I ask that you subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter. You can also listen to the show on Podbean and iTunes. Of course, don't forget to log on to rfgeneration.com to join our playthroughs and discuss the amazing games we play together. Thank you as always for listening, and now, without further ado, episode 0 of the Community Playthrough Wrap-Up, but you know it better as the Playcast.
Hi everyone, and welcome to RF Generation's Community Playthrough Wrap-Up. This is episode 0. I am your host, Rich. I go by Single Banana on the forums. Everybody probably knows me on RF Generation. And joining me is our 3 other individuals who help with our playthrough. On the modern side, we've got Fleech.
Hey, great to be here. You can call me Floyd or Fleech. Both work.
All right. And also on the modern side, we've got Grey Ghost 81.
Hey everybody, my name is Sean. I go by Grey Ghost 81 on the forums, and I'm glad to be here.
And assisting me, co-host on the retro side, is Mr. Tech Wizard.
Hey, nice to be here. This is Tech Wizard, and my name is Jamie. You can call me either one.
All right, and so this month, this is February, we actually played on the retro side, we played Parasite Eve, and on the modern side, we played Kingdom Hearts. So, guys, let's go ahead and get into some discussion about those games. So the first game that we played this month was the, for the retro side, we played Parasite Eve on PlayStation. And it's basically kind of a survival horror game with somewhat RPG elements to it as well. And so I guess I kind of wanted to throw it out there as far as what you guys thought basically about the mechanics of the game.
I really liked it. The game as a whole was really good. Interesting combination of sort of action RPG and turn-based style. Yeah, it had a really good story, good upgrade system, a lot of different stuff that I liked.
Yeah, I think I mentioned in the forums that I was really intimidated by this game when it was out when I was younger. Even though I was really into PlayStation 1 at the time, it looked like a very mature title to me, and I wasn't really into RPGs at the time, so I was really scared away by this game. And even now, reapproaching it, I wasn't expecting much from it, being a survival horror RPG hybrid from the late 90s on the PS1. I wasn't expecting much, but I was blown away. It was an incredible game that holds up amazingly well, but I'm sure we're going to talk about what a breakable game it is and a little bit unbalanced, but I'm sure we'll get into that. That was also one of my favorite parts of the game, though, so I don't mean that in a negative way.
Right, right. I thought it was kind of odd. When you think about PlayStation games, you think about survival horror. I think the game that comes to mind would be Resident Evil, right? And then with RPGs, you think sort of about the Final Fantasy series, I guess. And so it for me, it was a strange mix of these things where I was sort of like, well, I don't know, is this really going to work? But I thought it worked really well,
It's like somehow they only took the good parts out of both of those genres and put them together, which is amazing.
Absolutely.
So many ways they could have botched it.
Right.
Yeah, I was thinking the potential for cliches was extremely high with all the different genres they were covering there.
Right, but they melded it really well, and it was a really nice surprise. One of the things I think Tech Wizard that you mentioned was how it was a turn-based system. How did you guys feel about that? Did you find that sort of restrictive, or did you enjoy the turn-based?
I didn't find it too restrictive. No, I thought that the way that you got the charging bar, and especially that you can move while the enemies were attacking and they actually dodge their attacks.
Right.
I thought that helped a lot. It's not just rolling the dice every time.
Yeah, and I guess to kind of follow up, it was, that was a very RPG element. Like with survival horror, most of the time it's so action packed, it's so fast that with basically with this style of game, you had to move around, and you kind of had to wait till your turn. So you were still being interactive, not like where you're playing, let's say, Final Fantasy, and you'll hit attack and you have to wait for that attack, or hit spell and wait for that spell to be cast. With this, there was interaction in between, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a lot of fun. One of the things that I guess, and I want to hear what you guys thought about this, but one of the things that was a concern for me at first, especially initially playing the game, was movement space. As you'll recall, like every board is, and every encounter is different. You have a limited amount of movement space within that, and I thought, I thought that was interesting, but at times was a little frustrating.
Yeah, that was pretty. That made some of the battles a lot more frustrating than I felt they had to be. I think there was a lot of cases where the limited space was the only thing that made the battle difficult, and if it wasn't for that, it might have been a lot easier.
Right.
But in most cases, if you use things like haste or even also slowing down the enemies with your parasite energy, it kind of balanced it out to the point where it wasn't too big of a problem.
Right. And sometimes you would get a perspective from up top, and then sometimes you would get a sort of a frontal, full sort of perspective of the characters and the enemies. So I thought, for me, the diversity was really nice, and it kept the game from becoming boring, and you could tell that the developers put a lot into this game, to have these different scenes. The battle sequences weren't the same every time, and you had these different spaces to move in, some wider, some more restrictive, and I think this also showed up in the boss battles as well, and maybe that's where we should go. Maybe talk a little bit about the boss battles and what you guys thought about some of the boss encounters. Of course, I think everyone that listens to this knows that they're going to get some spoilers, so don't worry about that at all. So
yeah, if you're listening to this and you didn't, you should have played the game.
Absolutely.
That's the whole point of this talk that we're having.
That's what's called the wrap up, right? So Sean, what did you think about the boss battles? Any in particular that stood out, or as far as the space
my God,
issue?
when you're fighting Eve on the horse carriage was my favorite.
Oh, okay.
That was amazing.
Was pretty awesome.
Okay.
When on the moving carriage, and the part where it's like top down, and she's outside of the carriage, and then she's above you and all around you. That was my favorite one by far.
Oh well, that's odd, only because that to me, and I was talking about the restrictiveness. That was by far probably the most restrictive battle. don't you think?
Right, and it was probably the most canned
Mm-hmm.
battle. It was very, scripted and a lot less maybe tactical skill required than some of the other boss battle, like the worm battle that came right after that required a little bit of skill. But I thought that just the scene that was set and the plot advancements that were happening as you were playing that out were pretty awesome.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely find that in a lot of games where if the story and just the events going on are good enough, I can ignore some of the issues with the gameplay.
Well, Jamie, what was your favorite battle? What did you think?
I'd say probably the T-Rex in the museum. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah,
that was a good one.
Like fire-breathing, laser-shooting T-Rex.
Tough one, but that was a good one too.
Yeah, that was a great one. For me, I think the optional, the warehouse battle with the crab. I really enjoyed that one. It was tough. It was probably one of the tougher ones, and I think for a lot of people they had a lot of problem with it. But yeah, a lot of our participants got their butts kicked by that crab. And for me, it wasn't that bad because once you had the multi-shot, and that was what I was trying to tell everyone, to find the shotgun, in the sewer. It was a really quick weapon to find, but it was a little hidden though. But if you could find that and you could fire from the side, you could pretty much take both claws out around the same time and only have to deal with the middle. Probably the most difficult part of that fight was the eyeballs, the lasers from the eyeballs, how they would cross. And
that ate up health really quick.
It did. So I just kept spamming haste. Anytime haste would go out, I would always make sure that I had that, so that I at least had some sort of run from that. But basically, as long as you stayed next to the crab as it was moving in a counterclockwise fashion around the room, then you could avoid the majority of the attacks. So I didn't think it was bad, but there was definitely a learning curve on that battle, right?
Yeah, I don't think that was my favorite, just because it was a combination of at first too hard and then at the end too easy.
Right.
Like when you first go into it, you're just getting completely destroyed, and then once you figure out the pattern, it's almost impossible to lose, really.
Okay. Well, how about the rooftop battle? I think there was several people had some difficulty with a certain part of the rooftop battle, which
even though they were explicitly told what to do, and then we had like five people comment after the fact. I didn't know where to go. Okay.
Well, I can't remember.
Yeah, I was one of those.
Yeah, was it announced? I think it was announced as a spoiler, though, wasn't it?
I'm not sure, man. But all I knew is I knew where to go. Yeah. I even posted that I forgot for a split second and kind of panicked, but then remembered to head down the screen as opposed to up.
Yeah,
and I was fine.
I'll be honest, I got lucky. I just got lucky. I went down first just because I was like, okay, well, this looks like the direction the planes are coming into the building. Let's go the opposite way. And so, I just got on that painter's scaffolding or whatever it is that you take to the bottom, and for me it was luck. Just complete luck.
Yeah, I think for me I had missed the announcement or whatever on the post that explained what to do, because I just had no idea when I was first doing that. And I know I died at least twice on there before I just actually gave up and went for a walkthrough, because each time it was so short, the amount of time, if you don't know where to go and you're trying to explore. Like I was going to kind of to the top of the screen, and I was trying to get into the hole where the boss went into, and I just didn't know where to go, and every time it didn't really give you a lot of time to figure it out.
Right.
Now I did screw up, and I'm kind of glad to see that I wasn't the only one. After the final boss, when he's chasing you, I got caught like a few different times. A couple times for my own stupidity, and a couple times because it wasn't clear where to go.
Right.
But luckily, as I alluded to before, the game, by the end of the game, if you kind of, if you game the system, so to speak, you can basically be, overpowered at the end of the game. So the final boss battle, I found actually a few unique ways to get through it real quick. So it was actually kind of fun it was almost more like experimenting with playing with the powers at the end of the game.
Yeah.
To have to do the boss battle more than one time. It was kind of fun.
Right, yeah. There was, and I guess that's something that probably wouldn't be bad to go ahead and talk about, is that I think some people are a little disappointed in the final battles, and because there was a certain spell that you could spam and really go through easily. I used it one time against Eve in that initial battle, but the battles on the aircraft carrier, I never used that spell again.
I think the most useful spot for it was against the guy who split into two with the flying half. Because once you split into the flying half, then you hit both targets. And well, I think even before that, you could hit two targets too.
Okay.
And it made that considerably easier because it usually killed off the flying target first. And then you just had to deal with the one on the ground.
So for our listeners who don't remember, what was the name of the spell again? Do you guys remember?
Liberate.
That's right.
Yeah. And
it's
did
the
you
last
know,
one you get, I think.
when that form splits into two, I believe if you kill the one on the ground first, that they both die.
Okay.
Really? I didn't know that.
People who didn't know that, I'm pretty sure that's true.
Okay.
But yeah, liberate. If you do, I don't know if it's dependent on the level, but if you do liberate on the first form of the boss, it kills it in one shot.
Right.
It might depend on, or no, I guess it requires full Parasite energy, doesn't it? I was going to say it might depend on how much Parasite energy you have available, but I think it requires a full charge.
It does, yes.
Okay. So, well, that's a good segue to something to talk about. How did you guys feel about the Parasite energy? Did you feel that was adequate?
It was rough if you didn't use the trick that I told everybody, which is if you carry a extra set of armor and just switch back and forth, it makes the meter recharge quicker.
Okay.
But if you weren't cheating like I was, it would be tough to wait around for that thing to fill. See, then you would only be able to use liberate maybe once or twice during the form of a boss.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that might be the difference because I wasn't using that trick. I didn't know about it through the first half or so of the game, and then when I did find out about it through your post, I ended up forgetting about it. So,
I think
that definitely made a difference towards the end because, like you said, you could only get maybe one or at most two liberates off on any one form.
Right, and I didn't think it was. I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily. I'll say it's not cheating. I mean, it's within the game. I mean, so it's not cheating. But I had already finished the game before you posted that, I believe, and I did not use that technique. But of course, I wasn't using liberate either. So I was doing the fights without using liberate, and basically the only two spells that I was using some haste for some of the battles, and then of course the heals. For every battle.
The heals were useful.
And I never found that, I didn't have enough PE energy during any time. I felt like it. I felt like it recharged fairly quickly and efficiently, and I never felt that I was ever stuck where I couldn't heal or, use certain abilities when I needed to. So I guess that's kind of how I felt about it. I thought it was fairly well balanced, and like you said, if you used liberate and you didn't know the armor trick, then you definitely had to wait, and you could probably only use that spell one time during that battle. So, for that, it wasn't. I guess it kept it from being so overpowered.
And speaking of overpowered, how cool is the weapon customization system in this game? It's once you master it. I mean, it's confusing as all hell, but once you learn how to move the attributes and level the heck out of whatever the good machine gun is or whatever armor like heals you when you wear it, and you can add other attributes or whatever. Like I found that it's it was difficult at first to figure out what was going on because you actually you discard the weapon that you select when you think you're selecting the weapon that you're going to upgrade, but it's the other way around. So,
Yeah, it's a little
but
confusing.
once you get the hang of it, it's what a cool system.
With that, I find, at least with the confusion, that having the manual and having read that first really makes a big difference, because I never really had that confusion myself because I read through the whole manual. But yeah, if you don't have the manual, or if you're playing on, I can't remember if there was other ports of it, but if there's another version of it that didn't have the manual, then that would make a big difference.
Oh, so you're one of these guys who reads the manual, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah,
not typical.
My issue with that is the copy I had, I'd gotten it from a flea market a few years ago, and it did not have the manual with it, so I did have difficulty. From what I remember, there was a fairly short tutorial. Am I correct?
There is. I was just trying to remember if that has that in it, though. Yeah. I'm not sure if it does.
It was rather poor and confusing, though. To be honest, I did feel like one of the negative things I did feel about the game was the inventory system, and I thought that it could have been a little better explained, and the weapon upgrades could be a little better explained. But like you said, Sean, after you learned it and you got it down, it's amazing. I mean, it was a great addition to the game, being able to upgrade and soup up your weapons, and I just love being able to take abilities from one weapon and putting them onto another. Like I'm like taking like shotgun blast and putting it on a long range rifle. I mean, there's no way you could do that, but it was great. I really enjoyed that as well.
Mm-hmm. I really liked the fact that it didn't feel like you're wasting upgrades on earlier weapons. Mm-hmm. Like at first, without knowing that, you might worry that you're wasting your bonus points or your plus defense, plus attack items on these earlier weapons when you might be getting a better weapon. You could save them for later. Mm-hmm. But if you use the tools to transfer over everything, then that's not even an issue. It just sort of eliminates that whole problem.
Well, what could you transfer over with the tools? I guess that's my question.
Transfer all of the stats. Like say on the weapons, there's attack, range, and I want to say recoil, but it might be capacity. I can't remember which.
Yeah.
And then there's also these bonus attributes, like you can get poison shots and tranquilizers. Different things like that that you could carry over.
Well, I guess
the only thing is you can only carry one type of thing at a time.
Right. And that was my concern too. Like you could only, like, let's say you had some great attributes and great stats that you wanted to transport over. Sure, you could transport all of that stuff. But if you had one of the add-ons, like the shotgun blast, the multi-shot, or the poison that you wanted to transfer, you couldn't transfer the stats and that. Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So you did have to make a choice at some point, which, I mean, I guess that's a little aggravating because you feel like you're losing something, but at the same time, it makes you have to choose, and because of that, it gives every person that plays a different experience, which is good. I did enjoy that. So
I was gonna add on to with the weapons though. One thing. I liked that there was a lot of variety in weapons, but I want to say that I didn't like the fact that it felt like once you got a good weapon, you kind of stuck with it throughout most of the game, or at least a long period of time.
Right.
And every other weapon you're finding was either not as good or just not upgraded enough to be worth it to switch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it sort of felt like there was more weapons than there needed to be, or at least they made certain ones just much more valuable than they should have been.
Okay. Well, that's a good thing.
I think that's kind of cool for a game that's 10 hours long, that like you can go through. I don't know, maybe that is too much variety, but like I didn't use a grenade launcher once in the whole game, like, and there might be somebody who relied very heavily on that. So for such a short game, it's like you said, like the developers put a lot of work in, maybe too much work, but at least, they supported different play styles by doing that.
Yeah, I like the variety, but I mean that, like say for example, I got the G3, A3, and then from that point on, almost every other weapon I was getting until close to the end of the game just wasn't as good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, even though they were being found later on.
Believe that's the exact one I was that was the gun I used as well. I had some poison, I had the shotgun blast on there, and I just put every other gun I got. I put the the attack attribute
Right.
on there. So
Right. And was that the rifle?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So everybody was using the rifle. Everybody was using a ranged weapon. Did anyone use like a pistol or anything like that at any point?
At the end of the game, I used the M8000. The attack and everything was good, but the main benefit of that is the 2 commands. That made a huge difference because then you could attack, but then also use your parasite energy too if you need to heal or do anything.
Right. That's interesting. I was wondering if anyone had gone through the game and used the pistols at some point, because with we were talking kind of before about movement space and how that was so limited that I always felt like I always wanted to use a rifle. I never wanted to use a handgun, and for that reason, I guess I felt some of, like you said, some of the inventory, some of the weaponry was probably a little bit useless except for transferring stats. So I was wondering if anyone had actually used a pistol or a close range weapon for that reason.
Yeah, that's what the M8000 was, and it definitely was the best weapon in my opinion for the end of the game, just with that 2 command thing. I think there are a few that were higher on stats, but the trade-off with being able to do more things in one turn, to me, was totally worth it.
Okay. Well, to kind of stay on topic a little bit, let's talk about, we did talk about the weaponry, and let's talk about the rest of the inventory system. Like the items and stuff like that. And as you recall, they're the issues with limited capacity. As far as items go. So, Sean, what did you think about that? As far as the inventory system.
I didn't have a problem with it. I followed actually you guys' advice of just using up the healing items and I never kept like the cure poison.
Right.
And I did not, I never used the bonus points on my inventory. I used 100% of my bonus points on my recharge time or my action time or whatever it was called. And I really only a couple times like bottlenecked my inventory and had to drop something good, but never a big problem.
For me, I usually I did run into the problem of the bottlenecking of the inventory, but it was more just because I didn't want to be constantly dropping items. I was usually waiting until I filled up, and then at that point I would start going through and discarding everything all at once. But I don't have any real complaints about the inventory. I definitely agree that the space wasn't a big issue as long as you were using your parasite energy well and didn't need to rely too much on the items.
Right.
But at the same time, because of the parasite energy, I felt that the items, some of them were pretty useless, like in the sewers from Chinatown, getting literally 1 million of the Cure Darkness.
Right.
Those were just so much more common than they needed to be. And a few others like that, like the poison that Sean mentioned.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess, with things like the poison and having inventory items like that, it felt kind of useless, but at the same time, with games, I guess I really get annoyed where you have to rely so much on items. It was good that you could use PE energy to cure poison if you needed to. But after the battle was over, you're no longer poisoned. So, as long as you can make it through the battle, I mean, I didn't see any reason to have those items around. And for me, like you said, they were kind of a waste of inventory space. I can be picking up, I guess mainly I was picking up weapon and defense upgrades. And then I was, making sure I had enough room for weapons, which, I still managed to do. I never felt like I threw down anything valuable. And maybe I just got lucky, in that aspect. So
one thing I really enjoyed was the fact that the parasite energy actually recharged, and it didn't require any sort of item to fill it up.
Right.
Like a typical magic system, you need to get, like say a Zelda game, you need to get jars of magic to refill it.
That's something we'll definitely be talking about next month with Phantasy Star, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. That's a great point. That was very, very nice. We touched on bonus abilities a little bit. I didn't know till probably halfway through the game that you could you had bonus abilities and that you could add bonus abilities. So for me, that was, I don't remember if there was a tutorial. Again, I did not have the instruction manual.
I don't think there was in game, no.
And so to find that out halfway through the game, I was like, oh my gosh, this is something that I could be using. That was a little frustrating. And mine was all just because, just my personality, all of my points went to the attack on my weapon. I love being overpowered. There's something about it. It just kind of plays into my personality. I love being overpowered when it comes to boss battles and, just common enemies. So, but how did you guys feel about those bonus abilities?
I thought they were good. Some of them were really useful, like the tranquilizer was extremely helpful in most fights.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I noticed that I don't know if anyone pointed out on the posts about them is, and I can't really confirm this because I haven't tested it too much, but I think if you have two status ailment attachments onto your weapon, like say ice and poison,
okay.
The most recent one I think overrides the original one.
Okay.
And I haven't confirmed that yet, but I think that might have been the case because I was noticing it seemed like I wasn't doing poison anymore once I got ice added onto one of my weapons.
Okay. No, I don't know. I didn't encounter that. I don't think I used ice or poison at any time. While playing, I use, certain other upgrades, but those are, those were upgrades that I really didn't ever use through the game. So I guess we should maybe, sounds like we kind of covered the inventory and the bonus abilities. Maybe we should talk a little about the story, kind of the background story and, how the story progressed through the game, and if, we kind of felt like we had a satisfying ending. So, who wants to kind of start us on that?
Yeah, I really liked it. If we want to go on the ending topic there, I liked the ending up until the very end. It was a bit more out of left field than I was expecting, and I'm never really a fan of cliffhangers at the end of a video game because video games are such huge time investments, and I kind of prefer it when they're a bit more standalone, but it's definitely interesting.
You could always beat the Chrysler building.
That's true.
Yeah, supposedly there's a real, true ending that I haven't seen yet, but
yeah, I watched about 5 seconds of it on YouTube, and I didn't care, so I turned it off.
Yeah,
I'm okay with the normal ending. It seems to get really convoluted for the true ending. So.
Right.
Really? Huh.
Right. I mean, the storyline is it's so out there. I mean, it's it's science fiction, and it's definitely interesting. And at some points I felt like I was maybe getting a little lost. With what was going on, but in some points it seemed really far out in left field, but for the most part they kind of kept it together, and I enjoyed it. I can follow along and I can enjoy it. I was always waiting for some huge twist where like someone who was helping you was actually bad or something of that nature, and that never really happens.
No.
I thought the other scientist, I can't recall his name right now.
Maida?
Yes. I thought that you were just kind of gonna get twist-ended with that, and that he was going to be evil as well, and a part of what was going on in Japan, But
yeah, I really was thinking that too. Especially there was that one scene where he was in the museum, and you caught him kind of like doing something in there in that other doctor's office.
Right.
Now, I gotta tell you that when at the end when you're on the battleship and Maida tries to give Aya the bullets, and you don't know what it is, but he's trying to give them to her.
Yeah.
And Daniel grabs him away and says, "We don't have time for that." That made me really sad. Like that really, pulled at my heartstrings. And I'm not trying to be funny.
Okay.
That moment was just really tragic and touching to me. And actually, one of the parts that I didn't like was when Daniel jumped out of the helicopter. I thought that was. It's okay, that's his redemption moment, but man, that was just really stupid.
He was like a space shuttle with a heat shield,
Right.
Coming back into orbit.
I was gonna say I'm actually the opposite. I really enjoyed that cutscene, and I can see the points against it, but I don't know. I just thought it was pretty awesome. It's so ridiculous and over the top, but
Well,
just really cool looking cutscene.
well, it brings up a good point too. I think it's something we're kind of beating around right now, but the love interest story. I mean, it was like kind of this
Yeah, there
odd
definitely
love
was something
triangle
there.
too, right? I mean, it was this very strange love triangle that we got put into, and it was never resolved. You know,
Right, and it wasn't very well fleshed out,
No.
if you ask me. I think, there was some hints of brilliance there, but that wasn't enough. There was really nothing there.
yeah,
I didn't really notice the love triangle. I noticed definitely there was a clear interest from Maida, especially with the charms he kept giving to Aya. But who was the third? Was it? Are you saying Daniel?
yeah, yeah. I got sort of inklings of Daniel as well, but maybe that was more of a kind of a partner, love. But
Yeah, I sort of took
interest.
that as either that or like a father-daughter kind of thing.
Right, but I almost
That's sort of
took,
how I took it.
yeah, but I almost kind of took him like not allowing the exchange of the bullets there at the end. I almost took that as like we don't have time for you to, sort of a jealousy. We don't have time for you to, try to mac on her. We need to kind of cut that off. So I did feel like
Yeah,
there
it
was
could
sort of
go
a
either
love
way.
triangle, and I don't know. I mean, maybe some of that was maybe lost in translation. I don't know, but I sort of felt that way in playing. But it's interesting to hear that people had different perspectives on that.
Yeah, it's really hard to say because a lot of, pretty much everything to do with that little part of the story was all in occasional glances from like Maida to Aya and little awkward moments and stuff like that, and nothing really said out loud. The only thing totally obvious was the charms, in my opinion, but everything else was pretty subtle, which for a video game I thought that was pretty good actually. The fact that they snuck that in didn't go over the top with it.
Okay. How about I guess one of the other things I liked in the game, kind of go along with while we're talking about the story, was I thought the cutscenes were for a PlayStation 1 game were simply amazing. My kid almost walked in the room when I was that first scene where that rat mutates. And I was like, oh.
That would have been a bad one for your kid.
I had to I was like, put your hands over your eyes, turn around, don't look at this, because wow, that was amazing. Just
Yeah.
just seeing these common sort of ordinary animals, mutate, was really neat and a really cool part of the game, I thought.
Yeah, I thought all the pre-rendered stuff was really good, as tends to be the case with Square Enix games or Squaresoft in this case, games from that era. There's some really beautiful stuff going on, and I think that just I don't want to segue out of the cutscenes, so don't leave them behind. But I just want to say the graphics in general, man. Like the map screen of New York, where you can just kind of zoom around and pick where you want to go. I can't tell you how many times I just sat and looked at that thing and would just sit and look at it for a couple seconds and then rotate it and just look at it for a couple seconds and watch the helicopters flying around or the boats in the water or whatever, and just like what they did with the technology that they had at the time. It was just really beautiful. I don't know,
Yeah, I definitely
it
agree on
sounds
the
like
city.
kind of weird to say that about a PS1 game and the map screen on a PS1 game, but it was beautiful to me
No.
in some weird way.
No, I completely agree. I completely agree with that. And having been to Manhattan several times, just the accuracy of it was.
Yeah, they really captured it. It just goes to show something doesn't have to be photorealistic to just capture the feel of a place.
Right.
Especially the nighttime scenes too, with the map. I liked how it changed between day and night with that.
Yeah, absolutely. That was really cool.
Right. And not to touch on it too much, but for me, there was a bit of a sentimentality seeing the Twin Towers. I mean, this game came out
definitely.
before that. before that event. So seeing those in the game, and depicted, in a pretty strong part of the game, and the landscape of the game,
Yeah.
that kind of tugged at me a little bit, yeah, again, just I think you brought up a great point about the map, and like I said, it was super accurate and just a really neat feature of the game. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, that was definitely one of my favorite aspects of just sort of general interface stuff with the game.
Right.
And anyway, to go back to the cutscenes, one thing, they were really good. I liked the pre-rendered stuff a lot. Like, I was surprised at how good they looked for PS1. But one thing I didn't like was the transition between the in-game graphics cutscenes and the pre-rendered. I found a lot of those were really awkward transitions and sometimes unnecessary. And like, especially if you think of the opera scene at the very start of the game, it's all in-game cutscene, and then at kind of an arbitrary point it cuts off the in-game cutscene and continues from the exact same point with pre-rendered. And I felt that was kind of a weird way of doing it. It feels like either it should have been in-game throughout the whole thing or pre-rendered throughout the whole thing, and not a sort of mashup of the two.
It's hard to know too in development, like how much time they had to make the pre-rendered stuff, and did they run out of time and have to do some of the stuff in engine?
Just storage space is another issue too with that.
Yeah. But yeah, no, that's just one of the things that's just a limitation of that era is that, if you're going to do pre-rendered cutscenes, you got to find a way to transition them, and sometimes it's a little awkward.
Yeah. I almost feel like I wouldn't have minded if the cutscenes were shorter, if they were fully within one type, all pre-rendered but a little bit shorter, or longer but all in-game.
Yeah.
I would have liked it if they were anime.
I could live without that. I'm not honestly a fan of anime myself, but
so
I put up with it in video games, but I'm definitely not a fan.
So any more thoughts or just on the story of the game? I mean, I think. Oh, go ahead.
Not too many, really. One thing I really liked was the moment with the dog boss fight, Shiva.
Yeah.
I really like just the interaction there between Baker and Ben, who is Daniel's son.
Right.
And how Ben had been so attached to the dog, and still seems to be attached to the dog even after he's turning into a monster. And sad that he's going, and thought that they did a really good job with the emotional impact of that moment.
Yeah, I know, you're killing the dog. I mean, gosh.
Yeah.
You have to kind of step back and realize that's what you're doing here. You're killing this lovable pet, but it turns
it's
into
not the dog's fault.
turns into this like Cerebus type monster, and that battle for me was, I think, was one of the tougher, because you had to kind of figure out which head to attack first, right? Because we see this in a lot of later RPGs where something will have multiple parts that you can attack, but you kind of figure out that one of the parts or one of the heads has a region, right, where it can heal the other heads. And so did you guys have any issues with that in that battle?
A little bit at first, but it didn't take me too long to catch on to what was actually happening there. I don't think it actually got me killed or anything.
Okay.
I think you have an issue until the first time the one head heals the other, and you realize you have to kill the one that's healing.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I guess it took me by surprise so much the first time it happened. I was like, oh my gosh, well, which one did it? And then, I was realizing I was attacking one or the other, but I sort of also couldn't tell when I had actually destroyed one of the heads.
That was a big problem, yeah.
Yeah, because it seemed like I kept attacking the same one. I'm like, okay, well, how do I know when this one's eliminated? A lot of times in a lot of games when something's gone, even if it doesn't physically show that, that's not a part anymore, you'll get a zero result, right? So I felt that I was still getting a result of how powerful that attack was, but at the same time, I wasn't I couldn't tell whether that part was finished or not. So that was
Yeah, I think it was just a problem with the heads looking so similar, like especially with the left and the right one, not so much the middle.
Mhm.
But it did to help you out with. I did have the little circles around them, and once one of the heads was destroyed, you couldn't select it anymore.
Oh, okay.
So there is that aspect to it,
Okay.
which I think is sort of what you were thinking with something to indicate that it's not there anymore.
Right. I didn't pick up on that at all. So I did have a little bit of difficulty, and I feel like when I did, I didn't die during that battle at any point, but it just felt prolonged. It felt like a long battle, longer than probably what it should have been compared to battles afterwards, right? So I think I was, doing a lot of things that were unnecessary during that battle. But anything else about the story that, did anybody want to touch on?
I think the only other thing is just in general, I love the escalation of the events, how everything is sort of small scale to begin with, just in the one event, and then it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And also just Aya's journey, sort of dealing with who/what she is, trying to figure out what's going on, and also you can see in Eve what she might become, and her fear of what is happening to her body and all that.
Right.
I thought that was all really well done.
Yeah, it was. It was really good. It was the game had a nice sort of natural progression. You're starting out and you're in an opera house where people are combusting, right?
Yeah.
and you really have to suspend your disbelief, for it to work. And it seems like everyone sort of buys into the main character Maya, or Aya. They basically buy into her theory, these people combusting, and it's sort of odd, and they evacuate the city, and before you know it, there's a battleship set to destroy the entirety of New York. So it escalates pretty quick, but still, a wonderful story, and just I can't say enough about the game.
Yeah, obviously the only negative being the bad science with the way the mitochondria, how they don't work like that. Like really, it's a bit of a stretch, but you can ignore that for how the rest of it's done so well.
Right. Well, how about I guess one thing, and I'll throw it back to you guys after this, but the only thing I kind of had left that I want to talk about was maybe the music. I want to get you guys' thoughts on music. Sound quality music is such an important part of the game, and I thought that, in my opinion, it was really well done. I really enjoyed the music. Didn't seem repetitive, and I think someone even mentioned, I believe it was on the forums, that the background music, as far as when you were in a certain area, would sort of keep playing during the battles, but the volume would shrink down, but you could still hear it in the background.
I can't remember. I'm thinking there's also the same thing that was happening with the game Phantasy Star, which will...
that's what I'm getting confused with then. I'm sorry. Oh,
you might be getting confused with that. Yeah, I think you might be thinking of that one, because that was the case in that game.
That's what happens when you play them on top of each other and you wait too long to record. So, yeah. My apologies.
Yeah, no, that's all right.
So, how did everyone like the music? Let's just go from there.
I really liked it. I thought the main themes of the game were good, like catchy themes. They weren't over the top or anything, but you could... they were memorable, and you could be humming them and enjoy them. And then also really, really good use of silence and quiet themes, like especially the one where Maya's having those, or Aya is having those flashbacks to the hospital scene. And just the real tense moments had a nice, quiet, intense music to go with it.
Yeah,
also, the only other thing that I really have to note for that is every time you hear Eve's opera singing in the background, it always seems to be before the characters notice, and it always is like you're just waiting for something big to happen, and that feeling when you're like, you guys, there's something coming, watch out.
Right. That helps kind of promote the survival horror element, right? I mean,
yeah.
I think probably the creepiest area for me, and and was probably the hospital, only because it felt, it felt so desolate. You would come upon, a few characters that you had to help out, right? But other than that, there was this feeling of, sort of desolation and being trapped, and not being able to use the elevators, and I'm like, surely this place has got stairs, but you turn corners and there's there's debris everywhere, and that was probably one of the creepier areas for me in the game. But just really well done. I thought hospitals are just strange anyway. Maybe I've watched too much Walking Dead or too many zombie movies that always take place in hospitals. I thought that was kind of probably one of my favorite areas as well. So, Sean, you certain feelings about the music or any type of favorite area that you like?
You know what? I don't have anything to add about the music. I can't remember it that much right now. So I don't have anything intelligent to say about the music, except for that it didn't stand out to me as being bad. You know what I mean? So that I'm sure it was fine.
And that's a good thing too, right? I mean, if it's
oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you don't notice it, or if it's there and blends in with the game, that's a good thing. So
I felt sort of the same way. It really fit the game. It blended in well, but it wasn't over the top. Like there's certain games I've played where the music is a major aspect of the game for me. Like it just stands out and it gives me a big wow factor. But then there's other games like this where it fits the game really accurately, but it's just quiet and it's not really overwhelming.
Okay. So
and as far as areas, I liked the zoo and the park. The park and the zoo. That kind of had like a Silent Hill vibe to me. I think somebody else might have mentioned that on the forums, and maybe I'm taking their thunder. But the Central Park section was maybe my favorite.
Yeah, you just like seeing people melt. Is that what it was?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that was the melting stuff. It was good. I thought sometimes it was a little cheesy.
A little bit, but it was still good.
Yeah, that
well,
was.
It gave off the that sci-fi B movie vibe. That's
right.
That was a big part of that.
Right. It was fine. I felt that like sometimes I was supposed to be maybe terrified. I maybe laughed, but it was all in good fun, and I thought it was, just like everything else in the game. I thought it was very well done. Jamie, any favorite parts of the game for you?
I think really it's just probably the final boss fight. I think that was definitely one of my favorite areas of the game.
Okay.
Throughout the game, I don't know, everything was good, but nothing really stood out to me as amazing and really memorable.
Right.
I do agree with the some of the boss fights, like the chariot one, and the T-Rex for sure, stuff like that. The final boss area and just that whole sequence with like the attack with the helicopters and all the various stages of the bosses were really well done, I thought.
Okay, all right. Well, does anyone else?
And the ultimate being thing, I thought that was really creepy. Like the baby thing coming out of the water there and all that. I thought that was really well done.
Yeah. I'm like, I think I was doing that, and my daughter, who's she's 5, she walked in. She's like, "Are you gonna shoot that baby?" I was like, "Well, it's not really a baby," and I'm trying to have a conversation with my daughter, trying to explain what an ultimate being is, to a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
It's not real, and I was like, oh.
When we don't even really know exactly what it means either.
Yeah, there you go. I'm trying to have that conversation. So, yeah. So, all right. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to discuss or talk about, or found particularly interesting about Parasite Eve?
No, I think we covered pretty much everything. The only other category of things that people usually talk about with games are the controls, which we didn't bring up much.
Okay.
But I was just going to say, basically, I have no real complaints or good things to say. It was just nothing wrong with them. I thought there was good controls. I thought the movement was a little bit awkward looking, but it performed well. Like you could walk around pretty easily, and it wasn't clunky.
Yeah.
But especially the non-player characters in any of the cutscenes and stuff like that, the way they moved and the awkward kind of walking turn that they did and stuff like that.
Right.
I was never a fan of that, but
yeah.
Otherwise, the controls were pretty good.
The walking was, the clunky walking sounds were kind of comical, and I think it was Floyd that said at one point he's like, they just move too slow, and I'm like, I think you hit O and all you gotta do is hit O and you can run. He's like, man, I didn't know that you could run through like most of the game. And I was like,
wow.
Oh my gosh, that would be the slowest game ever. So the ability to run was good. I thought that and from what I remember, during the boss fight, you were always at one speed. Is that correct? There wasn't like or the encounters. You didn't have to hit the run button. You were automatically at a specific speed. You didn't have to hold that down to.
I'm not
to
really
get
sure about that because when I played, I was always using the joysticks for movement. So when you're using the joysticks, it doesn't need the run button. It actually disables that, and then it's just pushing towards the edge of the joystick is running, and then less on the joystick is walking.
So were you playing from a PlayStation? PlayStation.
I was
2
doing it
controller?
on the PS2 controller,
Okay.
but I think it's the same case with the PS1 analog.
And Sean, did you have anything that you wanted to add, or any thoughts, final impressions?
Yeah, I mean, as I kind of was saying in the beginning, my takeaway impression of this game is that it's amazingly recommendable and for being a game that is so playable in this day and age, for a game that came out I think in 1999 that was a again a survival horror RPG hybrid on the PS1, and if somebody tried to say, this is a really good game, check it out, I would never believe them. But this game holds up astonishingly well, and I can't recommend it enough. I had so much fun with it.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. That's a good point. I mean, this is definitely a game that, whether someone is a survival horror fan, they're like, I like Resident Evil, or if they're like, well, I like Final Fantasy, I think this is a game that you could safely recommend to both, right? Because I think it has great elements of both. And
not much of a time investment. We should just
Right.
throw out there. The game's only 10. I think I finished in 8, but I was kind of buzzing through it.
Right.
If you took your time, really searched for everything, it's a 10 or 12 hour game. So you're not
definitely.
you're not putting that much time on the line to just try it out.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's a great point. Yeah. So definitely a recommended game. I was pleasantly surprised. I definitely remember when this came out. I was in college when this came out, and I did not pick it up only because, being in college, I didn't have a whole lot of time for RPGs, and I didn't really realize that this was a survival horror title, though I thought it might be from reading the back of it. But just becoming involved in RPGs was just kind of tough for me at that time. Though I do remember playing Final Fantasy VII when I was in college and putting that time investment. But it was one I skipped over, and for that reason, I'm really grateful for the playthroughs, and that this was something I was able to not only enjoy, but enjoy with other people who were playing it for the first time. And I think that was a great experience, and one that, even though I didn't get to play it when it came out, I feel like being able to share that with other people, and the experience was just really well worth playing the game and doing all this together. So
Yeah, man, I gotta say this. I believe, well, at least in my opinion, this was one of the best playthroughs on RF Generation to happen so far. So good job, Rich.
Well, yeah. Well, thanks, guys. I really appreciate
It's
it.
definitely one of the best.
Good job,
combination of a
everybody.
good game.
Everybody who participated. It's really fun to help each other out, and I feel like we, we had one of the most robust conversations and sharing tips and tricks and everything on this game, and it was really awesome.
Yeah, and this was actually a pick, right? This was one that we voted on.
Yep,
and,
community choice.
Right. So, I think that with the playthroughs, of course, these are going to be games that we, as the playthrough group, want to play and like to play. But it's great getting suggestions from our members, and we definitely welcome those suggestions. And we'll try to get around to most of them if we can, and kind of opens our minds up sometimes and our eyes to games that we haven't played. So suggestions are always welcome, and we hope that all of you will feel free to post those on the forums. And if you have any more thoughts about Parasite Eve, please post those on the threads as well, and post it on the Parasite Eve thread, and maybe we'll even start a discussion for that as well. So again, thanks guys, I appreciate it. So the game we played in February on the modern playthrough was Kingdom Hearts, and I'm going to let Sean, who was our leader for the month, go ahead and tell us a little bit about that game, a little bit of a plot summary and what it's about.
So Kingdom Hearts for the PlayStation 2 came out in 2002, and it really is one of the most, it's almost like a slash fic or something you would see on the internet. It's a game with Final Fantasy characters and Disney characters. So, I mean, it's one of the most amazing crossovers in gaming history. And, I mean, the plot is very simple. It's just that Mickey is missing, and you play as a young boy named Sora, who teams up with Donald and Goofy to save Mickey. And during your journey, you'll just you make some personal discoveries about yourself that are kind of nebulous and very emotional, and they didn't really resonate with me, but they really do resonate with a lot of people. And this series in general has a huge devoted fan base, and there's many spin-offs and sequels to this original game, and according to Wikipedia, the series has sold over 20 million copies worldwide for all the games. So it's pretty impressive. It's a big force in the gaming industry, and it's one that I've been wanting to play for a long time. And even though it's not the best game I've ever played, I had a lot of issues with it. I'm glad to have finally checked it out.
All right, and as far as I know, one thing that's interesting to me about this game as an RPG, and then throwing in these sort of Disney elements to the game, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you go from an RPG that's sort of a serious format to something like Disney that's more of a kids format. Did the developers do a good job of making it, keeping it more adult, or was it a little cheesy? Floyd, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
I wouldn't say it was cheesy at all. It's really a perfect game in the sense that it's got something for everybody. The story is, even though it's not the best story, as Sean has mentioned, it's got something for everybody. And even though it is cliche, it is quite interesting. It's a typical coming of age, save the world, unite your friends type RPG. And the mashup of Disney and Final Fantasy surprisingly works. It brings a lot of the almost childish magic out of Disney and brings in more mystical magic, more fantastical magic from Final Fantasy into Disney. And even though I had a hard time with the game in a lot of points, I did like it. Okay. And I know that you guys say that you had some problems with the game. I mean, maybe it's probably a good time to just go ahead and discuss, what things maybe that you had a problem with in the game. I know that
some people and a lot of people that were playing it during the playthroughs this month didn't finish the game, and were a little agitated at certain aspects of the game. So I'd like for you guys to maybe talk about that a little bit.
Right, and we actually had a good completion percentage in the group for this game, which I was surprised with, because I, for my frustrations with the game, I think if I was playing this game in my personal life, I'm not sure if I would have finished it. But as being the host of the game, I felt I had to push through it. And I'm glad I did. I really liked the final 2 hours of the game was really cool. But the main problem I had with this game was the pacing, and that it's just not a smooth ride through the game. I refer to games like this as having speed bumps, and for me, like when we played the Wind Waker, it was very similar, because you're trying to get through something and you keep having to stop and figure out, what do I do next? Which some people love that kind of stuff, but it's, for me, it doesn't always work. And the other thing, aside from the pacing, was that there's so many worlds you go through. You go from world to world, and they're all themed based on Disney properties. There's Under the Sea from The Little Mermaid, and there's Halloween Town from The Nightmare Before Christmas, and there's a whole slew of other ones. And some of them are really fun. Halloween Town was really fun. Under the Sea was not fun at all. They had you swim, and the swimming mechanic wasn't that good. And so I would say about half of the worlds were pretty fun, and half of them were not that fun at all. So that just added to the overall flow of the game being really flawed. But having said that, I did have a lot of fun moments with this game. The combat is more of an action. I mean, it's literally like a hack and slash, button mashy kind of combat, and there's a lock-on mechanic. It's pretty. I'm not going to say it's the most sophisticated thing in the world, but for 2002, it carries itself through the game. It's a fine combat system. Excuse me.
Yeah, I thought. Sorry to interrupt there. I like the combat system.
No, go ahead.
It was, even though, like you said, it wasn't that simple, but it was pretty exciting and fun. That was my highlight for the game for sure. Right.
I like the menu on the side, but that also that you could map your spells to, you could map out your things and strategize.
And see, that was good, because you strategize, and you can also pull off moves really quickly, which add to that frantic pace that is really at the heart of an action RPG.
Right.
So my only gripes with this game were that it got off to the wrong foot. After a really cool opening cinematic and sort of choosing your specialties, you're thrown right into a fetch quest. And that, after such a build-up, I found that to be such a letdown.
Yeah.
And it was hard. It was like, that first, I can't remember what the first boss's name was. It was sort of that nightmare type thing in that stained glass world. But that was really cool. It was a really good way to teach you the combat system. It was super fun, super engaging. And then you're plonked onto Destiny Islands, and it's just, gather supplies for the raft. And I think after all that hype that was, created by that opening scene, it really grinds to a halt, and that's why I like your speed bump analogy. This game really does just dangle a carrot in front of your nose at so many points in the game. That was tough for me. And my only second complaint was the really poorly done platforming. I don't think I have to say anything more than that. The platforming was pretty bad.
It's true. Yeah, the platforming is bad because Sora's jumps. He kind of just jumps straight up and then floats, and it's really challenging.
It was really wonky, yeah.
Okay.
Right. But I'm with you as far as the beginning of the game. I think what they were trying to do was establish Sora's relationship with his friends, because there is some character development there, but they just really fumbled that and went about it the wrong way, like you were saying with the fetch quests.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing about the beginning of the game was that the game is very difficult in the beginning, and I had to grind my way out of a hole for like 2 hours at one point very early in the game, and I was wondering if I was doing something wrong, or because I mean I was getting killed in like the second or third world.
Yeah, you're right, because I think if you come in with the mentality, oh, it's Disney, it's cutesy, this is going to be a walk in the park. This game is fairly challenging at times. You know, if you let your guard down, you will lose some major battles.
Yeah, and I know you were having trouble with the friendly AI, and you know there is some customization in your characters, but it's almost like you can program to either all out attack or not at all. Like it's a little better than I'm making it out to be, but yeah, the friendly AI is a little off. But yeah, the game's hard as hell in the beginning, and that was a little bit frustrating for me. So
Okay, I think it's interesting that you guys mentioned that there's a platforming element to this game. Not playing this game, and just I remember seeing commercials for it when I was younger, but I did not realize that there was actually a platforming element to the game. Can you kind of tell us a little bit more about that? Because I think, with standard RPGs, there's really not much of a platforming element typically. So I find it a little interesting.
I think that the one world was actually Monstro, which is the whale from Pinocchio. When you're inside Monstro, there's a lot of platforming, and you're going through the chambers of his stomach, and it's very maze-like. You get lost easily, and it involves jumping from level to level. And that world was one of when I was mentioning there was good ones and bad ones. That was one of the worst because of that.
Yeah, I think the platforming was maybe used to add verticality to the levels, to create more of a spatial sense to the levels. And
it worked in the Tarzan jungle. There was some platforming there, and there was some there was a mechanic where you kind of ride the vines, like you're skating down the vines like Tarzan does, and that actually worked pretty well, but it failed in other places.
Okay, well, what are some, I guess we kind of talked about a few negative aspects of the game. What were some things that you guys really enjoyed about the game? I know you said something about the menu system. So are there other aspects of the game that you really enjoyed or thought that the game did well?
Yeah, well, like I was saying, in the combat system, you have this menu always at the bottom left hand of the screen, and in your command button, the X button, you can either attack or use the menu to go to your magical spells, which if you're fighting like one large enemy or a boss or a small group, you can do it that way, but you're better off mapping the spells that you like to, say, the triangle button or the square button. So you can like what I did was I had a healing spell on the circle button, and I had whatever my most powerful spell was on the triangle button, and then you have a regular attack. So you can bounce around off enemies. You're locking on to enemies. You're shooting spells. And then there's a roll. Actually, you can dodge and roll out of the way. So there really is a lot of depth to it. But the boy, I got lost there. Floyd, help me.
That's right. I think where you're trying to go is the combat it's a lot of fun. It's really frantic. And just like quick mapping, special moves to the buttons, just in a way adds to the tension and really makes you feel like you're in the middle of all this like fast-paced action, and it makes it, I can't say easier, but it makes it more convenient because you're not cycling through a menu. Like, you're not going to your magic, your healing spells, and then which healing spell you want. It's all there. So you're really, it's a lot of like almost Twitch reactions to what towards the way the battle's going, and it definitely made for a lot of exciting boss fights. Now my favorite thing was just breathing new life into Final Fantasy characters.
Okay.
And it was really cool to have these originally voiceless Final Fantasy characters speak.
Now, this is cool, and I don't mean to interrupt, but I would like for you to elaborate on this a little, because I didn't recognize any of the Final Fantasy characters in this game, because whatever games they're from, I haven't played yet. So if you wouldn't mind, like, tell me about some of the Final Fantasy characters and what games they were originally from and how it was to see them in a PlayStation 2 game.
Well, of course, let's start off with the big guy. We have Cloud Strife from Final Fantasy VII. Now, because a lot of these characters were, just from like text box only games, you sort of, in your imagination, have an idea of what they would sound like. And I didn't really think Cloud sounded quite right. But that's just my opinion. He did sound strong and stoic, but it wasn't the perfect voice for him. Now we also have Eris, who, of course, is just like a sweet, down-to-earth, wholesome girl, and that carries through. I thought her voice acting was done really well. We have Yuffie, also from Final Fantasy VII, and she's really like spunky and energetic.
Yeah, I liked her in the game. I would probably like her in Final Fantasy VII one day when I play that.
Yeah,
she's one of the character.
She's one of the more well-known characters in that game, besides Cloud. So
definitely, because you haven't played Final Fantasy VII yet, you'll there's one side quest that might change your opinion of her. Okay. Foreshadowing.
Well, I liked
anyway,
kicking her ass in the Coliseum, but no, she was a funny character.
We have now the last guy to stand out in my mind was Squall Lionheart from 8, and he goes by a different name. I think it was Leon. I think he went by Leon, which, if you follow your Final Fantasy lore, if I'm not mistaken, was his rival or adversary in 8. If anyone out there can correct me if I'm wrong, please, because I haven't played that game yet. So, he is just sort of like vocally is just like the archetypical, strong guy, tough guy, and he sounded pretty good too.
Okay.
Cool, man. That actually, if I may, I would like to segue into one of the other things that I really thought was great about this game, since we're talking about voice acting, was the production value in general for this game was amazing, in my opinion. I think the graphics were top-notch, the music was great, and the sounds, the game is very colorful. The 3D models of all the Disney characters look awesome. Actually, I think the weakest character model was Sora himself, the character that you play. But to me, everything else looked great, and there were some. Again, the worlds themselves were a mixed bag, but some of the worlds had this like dreamlike quality, especially like the Alice in Wonderland and the Halloween Town, where there's almost like the limitations of the PlayStation 2, the hardware, become part of the environment in the way that when they use like a 2D wallpaper rather than having a full 3D environment, it doesn't look like they're doing it. They're not trying to hide it, and it becomes a part of the
you're right.
Environment in a very dreamlike way, and it's almost like those old Sonic team games, like Nights into Dreams or Sonic Adventure or something on the Dreamcast, where they just go with it, and it actually ends. In my opinion, it enhances the effect, and the environments look great.
I think one of the most exemplary worlds of seeing like just the level design being put to good use is in Wonderland in the tea room. I can't remember what it's called, but where you fight. He just looks like one of those like construction paper cutout guys.
Right. That's one of the first bosses in the game.
Yeah, one of the first major bosses. And but before you go into the fight, you have to alternate. I was going to say perception, but that's not quite right. You have to alternate the orientation of the world. So up becomes down, and the floor becomes a ceiling, and all that. And that sort of lends to like a puzzle-solving, platforming element, which works really well. But it in terms of level design, it was really nice, and like what we would now consider technical limitations really aren't, because it's like the wallpaper. It looks like wallpaper. You say, oh, that's just okay. Well, it's flat, but it's a wallpaper. They sort of use their shortcomings to their advantage. Now, what about, because like this is Disney, so one thing we have to touch on is the music. What did you think of it, Sean?
Yeah, that I feel, I'm just thinking about, I feel like where there was like those iconic licensed songs that I kind of got sick of them, and where it was more like original music, it was better. Again, I hate to harken like on how much I didn't like something, but the Under the Sea world, the Little Mermaid world, played like a 5-second loop of Under the Sea, like over and over and over and over, and it
that would drive
really
me nuts.
like it got pretty grating. So
I think that was my complaint too, that they would take a short sample of an iconic song and just play it to death.
Right,
and it really, like, I like Disney music, and it's always really like upbeat and catchy and uplifting, but to hear sort of the same thing over and over again really ruined it for me, at least while I was playing the game.
Right, and again, having said that, I do say that the music was really good, but really more I'm saying that about the original compositions and not just the rehashed versions of annoying Disney songs played in a loop.
So they didn't really do anything with the Disney songs then? It was just more or less clips taken directly from the original songs, and like I sort of almost expected them to have remixes of the music and really mix it in with the style of Final Fantasy. And
I think they may have slightly modernized them.
Yeah, but it's nothing like, and that kind of stuff may come in the later games for all we know. Like this is the first and only game I've played so far, but they didn't do anything that would stand out and say like, wow, they did like a dubstep mix, like the Jungle Book song or what, you know what I mean? Like nothing like that. Just basically like video game music versions of some songs from the movies.
I think they also had a lot of almost like kiddie sounding music at a lot of points.
Yeah, but that was okay. I mean, and when it needed to be dramatic, it was, and when it needed to be intense, it was. And actually, the music will, an enemy's coming because the music would turn intense like 3 seconds before the enemies actually appeared. So you got a pretty good warning that you were about to do battle. Most of the time, that's pretty funny.
Okay, well, we were kind of talking about, the characters and everything, and one thing that I think someone mentioned earlier. I'm not sure which of you, but you said something about a part of the plot is that you become emotionally involved in the main character, Sora. I wanted to know kind of how, thinking of other games that we've played, and I know we played Fragile Dreams in 2013, which was a heavily, heavily emotional story. I guess I wanted to know how it kind of compared to that. I'm sure it wasn't that emotional, but just, I guess I want you to talk a little bit about that.
Rich, that's an awesome question, and I'm glad you brought up Fragile Dreams, because man, what a good comparison, and what an example of how it worked in one case and did not work in the other case. In Fragile Dreams, what was the kid's name? Sato, I think. That kid was one of the most emo, like melancholy characters I've ever played in a video game. But because of that game, and because of what it was conveying, and because it succeeded in sincerely conveying what it was trying to convey, like I identified with that character so much. Now take Sora, who's kind of the same thing, and it just didn't work in the same way for me. And Sora is even like less melancholy. He has kind of a happy-go-lucky streak to him too. So it's just weird. And Floyd, you may even have more to say on this, but the whole the way the game wanted me to connect with Sora and his relationships with the people around him, and there were actually some moments with Donald and Goofy that had more emotional resonance to me than the ones with Sora's friends. So Floyd, what did you think about that?
I would disagree partially with your assessment of Seto from Fragile Dreams. I didn't find him to be... Yes, he was melancholic, but I didn't really find him to be emo. In his case, you're right, it did work, because really everything was suddenly torn away from him. His world as he knew it, his family was just snatched away. And, he didn't really, whine and complain that his world is gone. He just sort of had this air of like bewilderment, but also right. Like a righteous heart, I guess you could say, even if it's cliche. It's just like he believes in the good in everyone, and that he can at least find a friend in a desolate world that, for all he knows, is long gone. Now, going to Sora, he is the opposite. He, lives on, a nice tropical island, eats fruit all day, and, gets a wicked tan. The only time that he gets somewhat emotional is when he finds out that Riku has eyes for his girlfriend, and Riku is only doing this to sort of get under Sora's skin. So really, I found Sora to be the archetypical, almost one-dimensional RPG hero of, it's my responsibility to save the world, and I'm always in good spirits. Just, she's my girlfriend. Hands off.
I don't disagree with you, but don't forget there were all those cutscenes with like, a black screen and just text scrolling across the screen of these poetic, like, I thought I knew what friendship was in my soul, and all this other hogwash that's the kind of stuff that didn't really work for me. And I liked it better when it was more like played out in cutscenes or in things that you could actually see happening.
Well, I think, Sora did have some moments where he doubted himself, but like in those internal monologues, yeah, that's what comes through. But at least when he's interacting with people, and like this could probably lend to a really exciting character analysis discussion, but that's a topic for another day. Sora would always have this aura of just being the altruistic good guy.
Yeah, yeah, and the character analysis is out there, man. Trust me. Like when I wrote the thread for the game, there's so much stuff out there. Like I said, there's a ravenous, devoted fan base for this series, and they have analyzed the hell out of it. So yeah, it's out there. Go search for it.
Well, it's definitely out there. My local retro store has figurines everywhere. Kingdom Hearts figurines, just boxes and boxes, that they brought in from Japan, and obviously they're selling them. So it is a series that has a large fan base, and I guess kind of getting some feedback from the first game. I question how that fan base kind of exists, but I think as some of you pointed out, the follow-up games have gotten a little bit better review. I wanted to talk a little bit about the story too, and if you guys think that the overall story works. I know you said that the point of the game is you're going to save Mickey, but it sounds like that there's several different levels of story that are going on during the game as well.
Yeah, the story is deep, and it does progress over the course of all the games in the series. But I think one thing that should be mentioned about Kingdom Hearts 1 at least is that it is the result of a coincidental meeting between the head of Square and the head of Disney in an elevator, and they kind of got to talking. Wouldn't it be cool if we combined our IPs into something? And this is also on. You can read up on this on Wikipedia. A lot of like Disney elements were toned down or toned up because there was a bit of back and forth between both parties. I think like the Square guys were really pushing for like a Final Fantasy, a darker theme, and the Disney people wanted something more, lighthearted and accessible. And so that definitely had an impact on the story. So Sean, what are your 2 cents on?
Are you telling me Are you telling me that Goofy doesn't use dark magic? I'm disappointed.
Yeah, that was my world was crushed when I found that out.
Yeah, no, well, just getting to, I guess what I was saying is Mickey is missing. That is really just like the start of the story, and as Floyd was saying, there's more to it in the end. There's the reason you're going to these worlds is because the princesses have been kidnapped because they have some energy that can be harnessed into dark energy, and I'm a little fuzzy on the whole thing because it is a little bit convoluted. But yeah, there admittedly is more to it than just Mickey is missing. But it all comes full circle and comes together, and it is explained why you're going to all these worlds. And actually, there's a cool part where you can kind of meet all the princesses and walk around and talk to them. It's nothing amazing, but to just see them all kind of standing together, talking to each other, and then you can interact with them is a cool moment in the game, I thought.
Now, those were part of the side quests, right?
That it wasn't really a side quest. It's towards the end of the game. How far did you end up getting in the game, Floyd? I forgot to ask you that. And I don't mean to expose you as having not finished the game. I hope you don't mind me saying that. But
no, I'll admit that I didn't finish it.
Right.
Geez, that was a hard month because I really wanted to participate in both games. Both games were, something things that I really looked forward to and really wanted to play. I got to the deep jungle with Tarzan,
Okay.
and because of not wanting to fall behind in Parasite Eve, it was tough to juggle that, but I didn't. Sorry.
I actually no. I was just gonna say, like, your question about side quests. Again, even I didn't do a ton of side quests because there was a certain point where I said, okay, I just want to roll the credits to this game and do my duties as the host. And we had some good participation from some of our other members as far as side quests goes. So I was really helped by a few of the other people who were playing the game in that respect, who shared their thoughts on that. But no, the whole like princesses being kidnapped thing is tied into the main story, and it all comes together at the end. And so, if I may, I would segue into the ending of the game without. Oh well, you know what, we said we were going to talk about spoilers, but actually not much of a. Yeah, no, no. We established that what we're doing here is inherently spoilery, and it's people who have played the game listening to us talk about playing the game. So,
actually, if you don't mind, before we get to the end of the game, I just want to see if you guys thought there was much comparison to Super Mario RPG. With the whole Squaresoft bringing in another IP's elements to their style of gameplay. Did you see much comparison there, or were they completely different kind of games?
No, not in the way. Like, when you play Super Mario RPG, you definitely feel like you're playing a Squaresoft game with a Mario skin on it, even though they came up with some creative ways to make that game Mario-esque. With this one, I didn't feel like I was playing, a Squaresoft game actually, like, at all. Like,
quite a bit different.
Because of like the battle system that Floyd and I discussed, and the whole like you level up your character. The RPG elements themselves are pretty light here. Like you do level up. You do have a money system and items and buffs and everything, but it's not really like a hard RPG, and I don't mean hard like difficult, but it's not like hard into like the RPG realm, and it didn't feel like some like technical, old school Square game. But that's a good question though, because it's a very similar concept, but it's actually interesting how those two games were very different in how they ended up coming together.
Okay.
Yeah, with the same basic idea behind them, but such a different result in the end.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Two totally different eras, too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And before we kind of get into the endings and stuff like that, too, I'd like to ask a little bit about the boss fights in the game. I'd like to know a little bit about, like, maybe for each of you, like, what was your favorite boss fight? Which one did you enjoy the most? And then, of course, maybe you guys can start talking about the ending and talk about, like, the last boss fight, creative, difficult, kind of how that went.
Sure. Again, kind of a mixed bag. I actually had a lot of... I wonder if you could guess which boss I didn't like so much. I'll give you a hint. It was Ursula in the Under the Sea level. And that was just... Actually, that one I just had a really hard time, first of all, figuring out what I was supposed to do, and then actually executing the thing that you're supposed to do, and those are two very different things, and when they both go wrong, that can make for a really frustrating experience. But my favorite boss battle was the end boss, so I'll actually hold on to that, and I'll let Floyd, if you will, tell us about your boss experiences.
Well, my boss experiences were sort of limited because I didn't get too far. But I did enjoy the fight with the Tarzan leopard, just because of the pacing of it.
Yeah, that was cool. And the dude, right? You fight the guy and
that hunter guy. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, that was a good battle. Actually, I almost forgot about that one.
Yeah, those were two good battles. Although I must admit, my strategy tended to be kind of cheap. I would, obviously in good RPG player mentality, wait for an enemy to expose their weakness and sort of play off that and use that to my advantage, which I did. But when I ran out of magic, or if the tides were turning against my favor, I would kind of just run around and try to avoid being in the line of fire until I built up my magic or got in enough little hits to because in all fights, once you land hits, you gain either money or orbs, which refill your magic, or various other things, health being one other one. And so I would sort of do that until I had enough health or magic to go back to that previous strategy. And it meant for a lot of prolonged, long-winded fights, but it worked. So
yeah, that's good strategy. And it's the kind of game where you could do different things. You can go all out or kind of back off as you need to. But yeah, I thought the final boss was my favorite. We had a user, Raidu, who was on our thread playing the game, and he disagrees with me on the final boss. He didn't really like it. He thought it kind of just went on forever and was frustrating. But I actually liked it because it's a classic like JRPG final boss, where you fight the final boss and then you fight the next final boss and the final boss, and there was like 5 forms of this guy.
We saw that in Parasite Eve as well.
Right, exactly. It was even worse than Parasite Eve in this game, though. It was, the cool thing is, though, for as unforgiving as this game was, like all the way through, it actually checkpointed you after each and every form of the boss. So there was
really, that's interesting.
Yeah, it was, and it was, oh man, it was a relief, because when you get into that and you get like you beat 3 forms of the boss or whatever, and you got that like white knuckle, like how long is this gonna go? I don't want to die kind of thing. Once I realized it was checkpointing, like I had way more fun, and it was just kind of, you're flying at the end, and you're obviously at the most powerful you're going to be in the entire game, so you're casting really powerful spells and just healing yourself constantly and putting up shields and just going all out. And I actually found it to be a lot of fun. And the designs of the boss was huge, and it had all these different attacks, and was coming from all different directions, and it was really cool. I mean, I had a really good time with it. So definitely the final boss in all of his forms was my favorite.
Okay. I've got kind of one final question. Kind of want to save it for the end, but Jamie, did you have anything else that you wanted to ask the guys? I know you and I didn't play it. We kind of busy with the retro playthrough, and we play as we can, and it's kind of been the point of the playthroughs, is that one person leads and plays through it, and if the other person can join in on their side, we always try to pitch in and play and have fun with everybody on RFGen. But Jamie, did you have any questions for the guys? Would you like to add?
No, I think that was pretty much about it. Most of the stuff I was going to ask has already been covered.
Okay.
I think the only thing that sort of was touched on, but not really in detail, was I was wondering, just in general, how you guys felt about the controls. Like you mentioned that the platforming was bad, but at the same time, the actions in the combat system were really good. So, just sort of from the perspective of not knowing how the game actually feels when you're playing it, how did you think the controls were?
The only thing I think that needs to be brought up as being a problem with the controls was the camera, because you don't have an up and down camera. It's a kind of, and this is very common in the early, like late PS1 and early PS2 3D games, where the camera only goes from left to right and kind of circles around your back from left to right and doesn't really go up and down. So that's a very common complaint about this game, but it wasn't game breaking. It wasn't something that was like amazingly frustrating or ruined the game, but it was a pain in the ass at certain points. But no, the controls were fine for me. I don't know if Floyd wants to add to that, but that was the only thing. Just the camera was a little, it's dated now. That's like the worst thing I can say about it.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you there.
Old games, the camera is the main complaint most people have.
I got to agree with you on that remark on the camera, because it would be limited to left and right, and it had a limited panning angle, so you couldn't really spin around 360 with the camera, which definitely made for a lot of tricky jumps.
Right, especially in some of the tighter areas, and some of the rooms you're in can be really small. So yeah, definitely that was a small issue there.
But like my opinion of the controls is it's all muscle memory. Once you've mapped certain moves to certain buttons, you're just, muscle memory and firing off various spells and attacks, and that's why it felt really fast-paced and action-y.
Okay. Well, kind of my final question, and I'm going to ask you guys this question, and if you guys have anything else you want to add, please feel free to. But my last question, and what I want to know, if you had to rate the game on a scale of 1 to 10, kind of 10 being the highest, if you could just kind of let me know what you would rate it as far as number and kind of your reasons behind that.
You go first, Floyd.
Okay. This will be a really tough question for me to answer, because there were probably just as many things that I didn't like as things that I did enjoy. And I have to give it points for successfully blending, Square formulas into a Disney world. The story, even though it was convoluted, was entertaining. It was an overall fun experience. The only thing is that it's not a game for everybody. Even if I think you'd have to be a die-hard Disney fan to really get the most out of this. But if you're just sort of on the fence on Disney, just watch it with your girlfriend, you'll like it. You won't love it. You might sort of lean towards disliking it, but you won't say, well, that was time poorly spent. So my number score would have to be a 6. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree. I would give it a 6 out of 10. But it would be a qualified 6 out of 10, in which I would say that I can absolutely see what people see in this game, and why certain people love and go as far as worshiping this game and this series. And I didn't hate it. There were parts that were really frustrating, and I didn't, there were parts that I strongly disliked. But like I said, the final, it left me with a good impression, thankfully, because of the final couple of worlds, and the final boss sequence was really good, and just some thoughts on the playthrough itself. I want to thank everybody who participated. We had, like I said, some really good participation. We had a lot of people finish the game. Disposed Hero, Raidu, Addicted, myself. I hope I'm not forgetting anybody, but a good amount of the people who signed up to participate followed through and finished the game, and went above and beyond in some cases with the side quests and sharing their experiences. And that's what these playthroughs are about, is people sharing information about what's going on in the games that we're playing together. So I really felt, even though this wasn't the best game in the world and we weren't all head over heels for it, we all had issues with it. The sharing of information on the forums was really good for this one, and I just want to thank everybody who participated.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, even a game that's a 6, as you guys have rated this, when you get together with a group of people and you're able to discuss it and just have a good time talking about the game, it can even make a mediocre game, as you guys have rated it, sort of in this case. It can make it a great experience, and I too want to thank everyone for participation in the playthroughs. It's been a lot of fun. We've been doing this for a few months now, and it's been a really enjoyable experience. It's getting me to sit down and actually, instead of collecting as much, to actually break open some of these games and put time aside for myself to play some of these games. And it's a wonderful experience, and I just enjoyed just the group at RF Generation who have been a real big part of that. So, and also you guys, of course. But
I wanted to say that I find these playthroughs really push me to finish these games way faster than I ever would on my own, which to me is a good thing. Like for our March playthrough now, which at this time of recording we're kind of coming up to the end of, I've beaten or nearly beaten now Phantasy Star, and that's like a 30-hour game for me. Normally a 30-hour game for me could take like 3 or 4 months, and to beat it in 1 month is amazing. Like I thought it was really good.
Yeah, that's cool. It's cool.
I don't think I would ever normally beat games that fast.
And I just want to say this
people pushing you.
I just want to say this to get some closure on the game, because I never did really finish it. Playing as part of a group was a huge motivating factor. And if anyone is considering playing this game, go for it. If you like it, great. If not, that's okay too. I just say proceed with caution, because it's not a clean, homogeneous, milk in your coffee type blend. It's just sort of like, you can say a bit of Final Fantasy got into your Disney soup, or a bit of Disney got into your Final Fantasy soup. But yeah, just if you play it, have fun with it.
Yeah, great.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, thanks a lot. Appreciate you guys all being here, and really enjoyed speaking about these games. This is basically our episode 0, so if you're getting to hear this, then you've probably gotten to hear it in a fashion that maybe you received it as a part of a certain award, but we hope that you enjoy it. Episode 1 is actually, we're going to conquer our March playthroughs, which for the modern side was The Last of Us, which is one of the most popular games from 2013, correct? I'm not a modern guy. Okay, wait, got it right. Yes. All right. And then we're also on the retro side. We tackled the RPG, the very heavy Phantasy Star from the Sega Master System, which I'm not gonna give my opinions. Not gonna give my opinions yet, but we've had a lot of fun playing that as a group as well.
Awesome. So, I want to hear what you guys have to say about that, because that is something I really want to play.
Yeah. It's the experience and playing it as a group was again, just very positive. So I'll leave it at that. But again, I just want to thank I'm Single Banana. I just want to thank my co-host Floyd, and then Jamie, Tech Wizard, and Sean, Grey Ghost 81. We look forward to seeing all you guys on the forums, and I hope that this will encourage more of you out there to join us in the playthroughs. It's just an exciting time for us, and exciting time for RF Generation. So thanks again, and stay tuned for future episodes.
Yeah, it's time to get those cartridges off your shelves and into their systems.
Right on.